Black and brown students from marginalized communities are disciplined and expelled at an alarming rate compared to their white peers. Policies that were meant to keep schools safe have instead pushed students out of classrooms and into juvenile and criminal justice systems. It's what we call the school-to-prison pipeline. Today, we meet one man who walked that path and worked to build a bridge out.
I had to survive because, remember, I didn't have a parent, so I had to provide a means to an end. I don't have a father, I don't have a mother, so it was something that is the inevitable for every young person that's trying to survive. You hit these streets.
Kenneth Simmons is now the Deputy Commissioner of Youth Services in Erie County. His journey is a story of crisis, faith, mentorship, and community. Every life is shaped not only by the choices we make, but by the systems that surround us. Throughout this Truth Be Told podcast, we explore personal stories of racial inequity across the lifespan. In this episode, we step into adolescence, a pivotal, fragile stage, and ask, when does school become a gateway to confinement?
We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks. We real cool. We left school. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We thin gin. We jazz June. We die soon.
Brooks' lines are short and sharp, easy to memorize, hard to forget. For many teenagers, leaving school early isn't a rebellious choice so much as a path shaped by poverty, policing, and limited options. That's where the school-to-prison pipeline begins. How did you end up in Old Buffalo, New York?
So I was born here, and so my mother was an addict for a long time. So when we were younger, we stayed in the Perry Projects, and I remember this little white car with this yellow circle on it. As I got older, I realized it's the state of New York, symbol of the state of New York, must have been child protection, whatever. Mm-hmm. And they came and got me and my sister, and they put us on this airplane. And the prettiest woman in the world I saw when I got off the airplane was my grandmother. She's like an angel. And we ended up down south. I was like 2.5, almost 3. And so I grew up in Bruton, Alabama. You know, my grandmother took great care of us. You know, I was an honor roll student. You know, I played Little League Baseball. I was actually phenomenal at Little League Baseball. And every Friday, you know, our tradition was T-bone steak.
Okay.
Every Friday, Granny made us T-bone steak.
Yeah.
I thought we were rich, but I didn't know she worked for 3 white ladies. And she scrubbed floors, you know, to make sure me and my sister had the best.
Kenny's story mirrors a national crisis. Between 2002 and 2019, the number of grandparents raising children because of parental substance use nearly doubled, from 21% to 40%.
We went to a little church. It was called Mount Zion AME. It was an African Methodist Episcopal Zion church, right? And then my Uncle Pete was the superintendent of the church. And so I was his assistant superintendent. When I was 11 years old, I taught adult Sunday school.
Okay.
Not because I was smart, because I could read. And I could comprehend, so I would tell the older saints what it was saying. Granny wanted us to be cultured, you know, and she wanted us not to be racist. And my grandmother was Irish and Black Seminole, right? So she dealt with racism all her life. So we had a great childhood. And I remember we had 2 pools in Bruton, Alabama. We had the pool where the colored folks swim, you know, at Bruton Middle School. And then you had the city pool where the Caucasians swim. And one day, Granny said she was going to take us swimming. We pulled up in front of the city pool. It was all white kids. My grandma said, y'all go swimming. My sister was like,
Right.
She's like,
It's not where we supposed to be swimming.
So me and my sister been making history all our life. We're the first Black kids to swim in that Bruton, Alabama city pool. And my grandma sat on the hood of her car, and she carried, a lot of people don't know, they used to have a pistol called a 32.
Okay.
Right? 32, and she had a 32 with duct tape on it. She just sat there with her hand in her purse, you know, we knew why her hand was in it. There wasn't nobody gonna mess with her, Greg, and nobody did.
Growing up in a close Southern family gave Kenny structure and high standards. He says school there didn't tolerate slacking, and it shaped his early promise.
When I was in 7th grade, they gave us a pre-SAT. I scored a 1280 on the SAT in 7th grade. So I was in 7th grade.
Right.
So the predictor said I would have scored above a 1500. And she taught us to be smart in school. You had to bring straight A home. I remember I got a whooping one time for bringing home a B+.
Okay.
I'm like a B plus.
High standards.
Like my granny, like, nah, you go to school, to do excellent. She said you can't be perfect, but you can be excellent. And
His grandmother attended every parent-teacher meeting. She didn't let him quit. Researchers say those high expectations from grandparents build what's called adaptive resilience, the ability to recover from hardship without losing hope. That standard carried Kenny far, but not far enough to shield him from what came next.
It was the summer of 1985, and we came to Buffalo, and it was during the breakdancing era.
Okay.
And so you seeing the people like you see on TV, the movie Beat Street, and Breaking was out then, and you actually see these type of dudes. They got the bombers on, the gooses on, the Tim, and it was lit. Right. Back then, the Perry's was lit. You thought you was in the South Bronx for real.
Okay.
Then you had the Town Guard, you had the Ellicott Mall, you had the South Division homes. It was crazy. The Jefferson Project. It was like you was in a major city. I didn't know I was in Buffalo. I thought you couldn't tell me I went in New York. You couldn't go back to Bruton, Alabama after that. So
was this a visit?
This was a visit.
Oh, it was a visit.
We
okay.
visit. So we went back down south, and me and my sister, we wanted to come back to live with our mother, and our granny was like, no, I know you don't.
Yeah.
We like, yes, we do. She's like, no, you don't. And we broke our granny heart, and we moved to Buffalo, and it was culture shock because we came from living a life of Raleigh to, overnight not having anything.
Around that time, about how old were you?
I was 12, about to turn 13 years old. But my granny, she could have, made us stay, but she didn't because she wasn't going to keep us from our mom. She wasn't going to do that, but she told us it wasn't going to be nothing nice. And it was many days I sat on that porch on Northampton and Timon crying, wishing I would stay down south. We had too much pride to go back. Right. My mother was in her active addiction, and most days we didn't have food. She kept her fronts up for a while. Yeah. And then she just, she just fell all the way off. And so I went from the honor road to the jelly road. You know what I mean? We came up here, and you go from eating T-bone steaks to just wishing you had a meal. And so I went to 39, and it was crazy because when I went to school, Brian Miller was in the bathroom smoking a cigarette. We was in 8th grade. He in the bathroom smoking a cigarette. I'm like, yo, you know what I mean? And so Karima Amin was our 8th grade English teacher. So they were asking everybody, did they know these vocabulary words, that we was going to be, learning this year. And I'm raising my hand. I already know all of them.
In Alabama, Kenny was in enrichment. In Buffalo, his answers made him a target.
So I'm answering all the questions and all that. And so everybody started laughing. I look back, Fred Toomer was in the back with his fist. He said, you asked one more MFing, but I wasn't no punk. Right. So we went outside, he said he couldn't punk me or whatever, and I walked back down the hill, and lo and behold, Fred Toomer became my best friend. He taught me how to smoke cigarettes. He taught me how to roll a blunt, taught me how to skip school, and so
the transition was swift then.
Yeah, it was very swift because I had to survive.
At 12 years old, Kenny was navigating hunger, addiction, and a whole new world. He describes the street culture and how quickly he found himself pulled into a crowd.
And I ended up, finding my way to Johnson Park, and that's where my uncle would be when they was in the game. So I would go over there, and if you went to the store, they give you a $20 bill. A pack of cigarettes was like $1.80. You always got to keep the change. So you went home about $24, $23 every day, enough to get you a nickel bag, a sub, and some cold to drink. And I started learning the game early.
And that's the thing about adolescence. It's when belonging can make or break you. When the system doesn't step in with compassion, the streets often do. And that becomes the first step in what experts call the school-to-prison pipeline. Nationally, Black students make up about 15% of public school enrollment, but they account for nearly 30% of law enforcement referrals and over 31% of school-based arrests. The U.S. Department of Education reports they are 3.8 times more likely to be suspended than white students. And those suspensions matter, because being out of school means being unsupervised, losing instruction, falling behind, and facing higher odds of arrest later in life. When schools rely on punishment instead of guidance, students like Kenny get labeled problematic before they're even old enough to drive. And those labels stick, because once you're seen as trouble, every mistake looks like proof.
I started at Performing Arts. I got kicked out of Performing Arts, went to South Park, got kicked out of South Park, went to Lafayette. I only lasted one day in Lafayette, got kicked out of Grover, Mr. Fisher wouldn't take me at alternative, so I ended back up at South Park. But I did graduate on time.
So what was that high school experience like, though, bouncing around?
It was crazy. I wandered the streets because it wasn't no sense in rushing home because there wasn't no lights. You know, if it wasn't nailed down, my mom was selling it. Then, you know, I got a girl pregnant when I was 15. You know, I had a baby, and I was just trying to, you know, just survive. A lot of times I ended up on somebody's couch. And so I ended up at South Park like junior and senior year, and my boys from off Walden, they really, you know, showed me a lot of love. I learned what real brotherhood and being on a team was about.
Did it become kind of like a replacement for the family that you had in the South?
It was, because that's why a lot of young boys join gangs, because they looking for a family. A lot of people don't know they're not trying to be mischievous on purpose. They not, you know, just in the streets because they want to be. That's where everything that they need is at. That's where they can't, what they can't find at home. You know, that love.
Was there anyone in school who tried to point you in the right direction to give you the support that you needed to take advantage of the skills that you had?
This white man named Ron Kent, he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and Dr. Phil Loftinara. They began to like really mentor me. They saw a gift that I had for speaking. I beat Hutch Tech in the senior oratorical contest. I wrote my own speech. It was called The Inequalities of Blacks in America. I started talking about how I wasn't equal because I didn't have a father. You know, I didn't have a structure at home. Why I didn't feel that I was equal to my white counterparts. Just the struggle of being a young black man, and I won.
It's a reminder. Sometimes one teacher, one voice can reroute a future.
I graduated on time, and then after that, you know, I just was in the streets, man. You know, we started getting real money. It was something that, you know, is the inevitable for every young person that's trying to survive. You hit these streets. By the time me and my brother Zach, by the time we was 19, 20, we had money long as Bailey Avenue, but we didn't know what we had. You know, we had a plug, we had some good product, and we was hitting the whole Cold Springs, like literally, not no exaggeration. Everybody tell you, you know, around here, you know, we was, you know, we was, you know, in the streets for real. You know, we lost a lot of friends. A lot of our friends died. That's when you realize that this not a movie.
Right.
You know, this is real life. And Zach went to jail, and make a long story short, I developed a habit. You know what I'm saying? I used to get high off my own supply. You know what I mean? And I thank God that I didn't excel the way I wanted to, you know, in the streets, because I'd have been dead or doing serious time. So he let me get a taste of my own medicine, and I liked it. You know, I started out as a party, but at the bottom of the knife, you somewhere sitting looking stupid and stuck. And I walked down here to 1333 Jefferson. And I walked in there, and Pastor Boy was in there, Kenny Smith, Ronnie Sessom. And what's going on? I was like, man, I'm a fiend, man. I was smoking. They all started laughing because I'm Juanita's boy. And you could tell I've been blazing. And they was like, whoa. I was like, yeah. So they called this place called First Step in Niagara Falls, and they said they had a bed for me. So I went to the window. The lady came to the window. And she was like, what you want? And she said, who you running from? I said, I ain't running from nobody. She said, you can't come in here. She said, but you can go next door, though. And it was a city mission for the mentally challenged. And so when I walked in there, they was looking at me like, I don't belong here. So I went in the room. There was a Bible there. I opened my Bible, started reading Matthew 25. I remember like it was yesterday. So I had a little broke piece of cigarette, and I went outside to fix my little cigarette. And I heard somebody say, yo, what's going on? I was like, yo, man, I've been smoking, man. He was like, no. I was like, yeah. He was like, well, a white dude just left, man. They got a bag. Hurry up. So I went and knocked on the window, and it was totally different. Her whole demeanor had changed. She was like, you serious, huh, baby?
What do you think would have happened if you took that first no?
I'd have died in the streets. I already know. I would have took it to a whole nother level because, like I said, you know, I had a habit, but I had a hustle, you know, and it would have got real. You know what I mean? And I wanted to change, but if the opportunity didn't, you know, allow me to do that, but I'd have died in these streets, bro. I know that for a fact. You know, every time I think about that, I kind of tear up because it was like she was an angel, and she was like, you serious, baby, ain't you? I was like, yeah, and she let me in.
What was it that inside of you that helped you take that step? to admit like I needed help.
Think about my grandmother ain't raised me like that. I'm looking in the mirror, washing your face, trying to come down, and I just was looking at myself and tears started running down my eyes. This ain't me. Because I wasn't an addict for a long time, but it took its toll real fast. You know, God was doing something, and my grandma ain't raised me like that. And so I walked my butt to the same place where I know that my mother got clean. Now, this time my mother had 7 years clean. And so when I got the first step, it was like a hotel, man, and you had a room with somebody that you shared. And when I went in the room, it was a guy named James. He knew my mother. And when he turned around, he looked at me. He was like, "You Juanita's boy, ain't you?" Like, "Yeah, I am." He's telling me about his mother, how she helped him get clean, and how he relapsed and how he was back there and he's going to get it together. And he had the little circle thing where you got to get in a circle. And everybody like, "I'm an addict named such and such. I'm an addict named such and such." Then it got to me, Willie. I wasn't going to say it. Yeah. I was not going to say it. I wasn't. Then I finally, with super crocodile tears in my eyes, "My name Kenny. I'm an addict." And that's when it just came, like the load just came up off of me. Yeah. And then I came home. I gave my life to the Lord August 18th, 1998, and the rest is history.
Kenneth found faith, but also something else. People who showed up and didn't leave. That's when he met mentors who helped him rebuild his life.
But these were the same people who helped my mother get clean, so I know it was real. And she went to Calvary Baptist Church. Guess where I was at? 1184 Genesee, Calvary Baptist Church. Bishop Bronner, Pastor Bronner at that time, was preaching about this guy named Peter. I was like, dang. Dude remind me of me. And when he made the altar call, my feet started moving. My body ain't want to go, but my feet started moving, toward the front of the pulpit. And I was standing in front of Bishop Bronner. He gave me a big old hug, and he turned around and he said, "This Juanita's boy, y'all." And the church just erupted because they was praying for me. Yeah. That church had been praying for me, and I made it. Bishop Bronner began to, mentor me, L. Nathan Hare and him and Rodney Johnson over at True Bethel and Bishop Pridgeon. And so these men began to embrace me. Got a job at Rite Aid across the street. My first check, I thought I was up, but it was 3 zeros. I forgot I had a kid at 15. I owed. The state took all that. They took all that little $78. Yeah. But every Sunday, somebody was walking up to me, putting some money in my hand, bringing me a new suit or whatever. And my god sister, her name, Judge Betty Calvo Torres, she gave me her Bonneville. Right? That's when Bonneville's was hot. I had a whip, had a little job at Rite Aid, but then at church they was talking about this volunteer and service to America program called a VISTA program. And I said, well, shoot, I could do it because I wanted to go back to school. Councilman Brown at the time, he had knew my mom. I was Juanita's boy. Said, come on and interview for this, VISTA position.
Kenny met mentors who opened doors. Byron Brown, Antoine Thompson, Joyce Nixon, Craig Hanna, Maurice Gardner, and others, who taught him politics, grant writing, and community organizing. Mentoring is one of the strongest antidotes to the pipeline. The Who Mentored You study found that 85% of young people with a mentor say that relationship helped them in school, and 74% credited with their success later in life. It also showed that kids who grow up with steady mentors, especially those who face hardship, are twice as likely to give back later, leading teams or volunteering in their communities. And looking back, about 3 out of 4 adults said that one mentor played a huge role in their success. So when Kenny talks about people believing in him, that's not just anecdotal. That's data. That's proof of what love and consistency can do. They didn't just tell him what to do. They showed him how to live.
And so I started being around this lady named Miss Louise Bonner and Miss Nettie Anderson, and Miss Zeddy Young. And they was like my mothers. And they taught me the importance of community building, and being a community stakeholder. And I was like, well, hell, I destroyed this community. So when I became a Vista that first year, I set up 51 block clubs. I developed the first real junior block club coalition in the city of Buffalo. I got a $5,000 grant, and I just went gung-ho, trying to do what's right. And then I developed the NICY Little League Baseball. I brought that back to life. I started with 3 teams, and I ended up with 18 teams and 480 children.
This matters because research shows that when schools and communities offer alternatives, after school programs, mentoring, culturally responsive practices, suspensions go down and outcomes improve.
And so I went back to college. I'm doing my thing now. And so all of a sudden, City Hall, Mr. Mike Norwood had retired, and the mayor, who was my man. So we was talking one day, about the team. I was like, you got the team? I said, Byron, I ain't on your team. If I'm on the team, I'm on the bench. I don't even get in the game. I ain't even six man. What you mean on your team? So he called me. He said, meet me at Spot Coffee. You ready to be on the team? I said, yeah. He said, well, I got a position, director of, recreation for the city of Buffalo. I said, how much it pay? He wrote it down on the napkin and slid it to me. It was like a movie. I said, shoot, oh man. You know what I mean? It was like a $20,000 raise.
Yeah.
And Byron began to teach me and groom me, and throughout the whole flick, that was my man. Willie, I just try to, help clean up what I mess up, but I know I'm fortunate and I'm blessed, and I give, what I didn't receive as a young man and as a child, and that's love. And I do it wholeheartedly.
Kenny went from the streets to City Hall, from addiction to advocacy. His roles have blended ministry with administration: pastor, chaplain at the detention center, director of recreation. He emphasizes love, consistency, and accountability. Today, he's the Deputy Commissioner of Youth Services for Erie County.
I think your career certainly has brought you full circle. And you mentioned earlier you wanted to kind of, make up for the negative things you brought into the community. What does it look like now for you still in the community and trying to undo some of the things that happened in our city?
I've touched a lot of lives, hundreds and hundreds of lives, and I see the impact, that happens when you are consistent at what you do. And it's not just me, it's you, it's Daniel, you know what I'm saying? It's Jamel. It's a lot of us out here, helping young brothers, and I see, that it's not in large increments, but I see progress.
Research shows that when kids have a place, a community center, a club, a mentor's living room, they're less likely to fall through the cracks because belonging changes everything.
And I like to change the narrative, for every 2 young brothers that's not going to graduate from high school, 8 is. 8 are here, Granny, because of us. You know what I'm saying? And they say, 1 out of, 10 going to get killed. Well, 9 out of 10 not, because of us. We have to begin to. Yeah, I try to clean up what I helped mess up, because I know if these young brothers just have anybody that would take an interest in them, anybody that will hold their hand, because real street cats trying to get out the streets. I mean, when I got the opportunity, I was like Uncle Elroy on Friday. I was gone. Mm-hmm. I was out. And if you could give these brothers a way out, they are going to be out. We just have to take the time and the initiative to go get them. I haven't lost one back to the streets yet. You got to go get them. Them drum brothers is crying out, and they angry and they mad, and it's not their fault. The situation that they're in is our fault. So we owe. We owe, man.
In a country where over half of high school students attend schools with police officers, but not counselors, Kenneth's work is a blueprint for something different. A system rooted in care, not control.
You know what I'm saying? And so, I do see us making a difference, but we can do a lot better, if we unify as men. And so I had a meeting last Saturday at my church. It blew my mind, all the men that showed up.
That meeting launched a dream for a gathering at Martin Luther King Park to commemorate the Million Man March.
I believe it's going to happen. And we're going to shut hate down, any animosity, any ill feelings. We're going to pray together, Muslim pray. We're going to believer pray. We're going to Christian pray. And we're going to recognize, each other as men. And began to raise, the Bible said, God said he will raise up a standard, and we the standard, and we're going to support each other. We're going to be there for each other.
After you're able to bring all these men together, what do you envision for the future of Buffalo, specifically a Buffalo that has black men united to support each other?
Controlling our own destiny, not allowing people to dictate who we are and what we're going to be.
One practical piece Kenny repeats is economic circulation, keeping dollars in neighborhoods, supporting each other's businesses, because economic stability underpins family and community capacity to care for children.
If you stick together, you can provide economic stability for your community and your people, but we don't support each other. Our dollar leaves our community 6 hours after we cash our check, literally. We want to talk about supporting each other. We want to talk about helping our sisters raise these boys. And some of our brothers are in the penitentiary. They never coming home again. Some of our brothers is in the grave and never come home again. It's our job to help raise them babies.
The school to prison pipeline is not inevitable. It's built through policies, biases, and fear. But if it can be built, it can be dismantled. We can advocate for restorative justice, where students learn from mistakes instead of being written off. We can mentor, volunteer, and support programs that give teens safe spaces to grow. And we can hold schools accountable for seeing every child as a person, not a problem. Because when we replace punishment with possibility, we make room for joy and for stories like Kenny Simmons's.
Thank you, Commissioner, Pastor, community advocate, leader, Kenny. I appreciate you sharing this story with me.
Thank you, man.
I'm looking forward to what you do in the future and how we can turn things around for the city of Buffalo, not just for Black folks, but for everybody.
I love Buffalo. I'm not going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? This is where I'm planted at. And we're going to turn the city around street by street, block by block, person by person.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate you. Chill.
Appreciate you too.
In our next episode, we continue this journey through a lifespan into flying the nest. We meet Sherman and hear about his path to independence and higher education. I'm your host, Wil Green. Thanks for listening. Truth Be Told is a production of Buffalo Toronto Public Media and Cruise Control Media in collaboration with Clementine Gold Group, LLC, and WUFO.